This is why I do it. I want to make sure with this gift that I've been given that we repay that gift because the job at hand is bigger than any of us. We owe it to all of us. This health belongs to all of us. We're either all healthy together or we're not.
Welcome to the Clear Skin Chronicles, the podcast that takes you on a journey to uncover the secrets of achieving glowing, acne-free skin. We believe that knowledge is power, and by understanding the root causes of acne, we can create a solid foundation for long-lasting clear skin. I'm Katie Stewart, registered holistic nutritionist and founder of the Clear Skin Solution, where we help women just like you get to the root cause of their acne.
And I'm Chris Brown, registered holistic nutritionist and program director inside the Clear Skin Solution. Through functional testing, we pinpoint where the body system imbalances lie, so we can dive deep into the acne clearing journey.
We work virtually with clients to clear up their skin from the inside out and have helped thousands of women worldwide regain their confidence. I am really excited about something because, as most of our listeners know, Chris Brown doesn't use skincare. She is more of like a splash some water on your face. She always gives me the side look about my skincare routine because mine's so on point. And then everybody, Chris Brown tried a new skincare line, Symbiome, and we've converted her. We have converted her into a skincare user. She is obsessed with it. She tried to take mine, and I said, no, you can't have mine. Get your own. So just so you know, we've converted Chris Brown. She uses skincare, and it's the Symbiome set. And today we have a very special guest. Chris, I would like you to do the introduction because this is how excited she is for our guest today.
I'm not going to do it justice because I'm this excited at this point. So it is. One, I did not try and steal Katie's products, Larry.
She did.
What I said was, I think you should donate them to me to see if this is really something that's going to continue on a long term, Katie, which was clearly returned with a hard, firm capital letter exclamation point. No. Okay. She didn't beat around the bush. So, Larry, run through your intro. We're not going to do it justice. I mean, I came on a little bit early. You weren't on
I
stream.
read his intro and it's impressive.
It's impressive.
His bio is impressive.
Are we going to do it? But are we going to do it? Here's what I have to say. I'm drooling right now because all my inner geek, all I saw was all the chemistry behind. And I'm like, what in The Alchemist? Oh, Larry. And now I'm starstruck. It's like,
Larry has a new super fan.
I like skincare and
you're embarrassing me here.
I'm like meeting an idol now. I can't do it. It's like me running into like a singer I like. So Larry, please, we never do this, but please do your intro because we are not going to do it justice.
Okay, and I'll try to be brief. I started my career a long time ago as a natural products chemist at Cornell, just looking at the things that biology makes for us, different molecules. Chemistry is a code of life, so having a good understanding of that, kudos to you, Chris. Then came out to Stanford for medical school, internal medicine, intensive care medicine, anesthesia. Was an academic for a while, practiced. The practice of medicine changed from being a profession into being a business, and all this emergent technology converged around, 2000 or so, when we had all this sequencing data that came out of the Human Genome Project, and we discovered that a lot of these sequences weren't human. A substantial amount of this was microbial, which reinvigorated our whole notion of our relationship to the microbial world. So I've been interested in the microbiome and the science of the microbiome because it's an emerging transformational science for now 25 years. I have started a couple of companies in this area, but in 2014, as the founding chief medical officer at AO Biome, we created the category of the skin microbiome with a product called Mother Dirt, which was a suspension of a live bacteria, an ammonia oxidizing bacteria, the thesis was this was part of our evolutionary legacy, and when we lost its metabolic contribution, and that had health consequences. Fast forward here to 2017 when we started this journey, which was an expansion of that thesis. It's like, well, if you lost one, how many others have we lost? And so we have developed a unique academic relationship with a community of hunter-gatherers in the Amazon. And from this, we've run 3 academic research expeditions and essentially built an evolutionary reference point. The reason this is interesting is for most of the 400,000 years our species has been on the planet, all of these things on our skin, things like acne, eczema, rosacea, and psoriasis, but more than that, all inflammatory disease, which includes heart disease, diabetes, metabolic syndrome, cancer, were rare if they existed at all. Evolution doesn't produce a species with the burden of disease of industrialized Homo sapiens. We did that ourselves. So as this data came aware, we saw that there was a definitely relationship. We have built the most comprehensive reference survey of what a biologically intact human microbiome looks like in a disease-free population that represents most of the way that human health looked like while we've been on this planet. And with that, that gives us something we never had before. You see, we have only studied us, industrialized Homo sapiens, and we can talk about the difference between someone who's sick and who's not sick. But we really can't talk about healthy without having this reference point. This is what it looked like before most of these diseases ever existed. And we have found a way to translate that information into products. And this gives us a chance to do something we never were able to do before. Everything that we're taught to do in medicine and everything that we do here is you come to me, you have a problem. I have a number of ways of introducing a specific drug or a cosmetic or ingredient to treat your problem. But the fact is we don't understand why those problems are existing. Now that we have this reference point, we can do something we couldn't do before, which is, can we restore the system to this healthy state before these problems ever existed? You can't restore something if you don't know what it looked like. So that's the foundation. The foundation is this is what it looks like when it works. This is what we look like today. And what we have found is there's a way to translate this without putting lost bacteria. We've lost 80% of the diversity that we had on our skin. What's more important is not so much which bacteria we lost, but what they were doing. So about 25% of their metabolic contribution is just gone. We used to have a yeast on our skin that made retinoids. And more than the ones that, we commonly talk about, retinol, retinal, and retinoic acid. The whole spectrum of these things. That's the way biology works. And so we've now got the opportunity to restore health. But if we're going to do that, we have to come to an agreement about what we mean by health. Because today, our notion of health is just not sick, at least that you know about. But from an evolutionary biology standpoint, health is the resilience in response to stress. And when we lost all of those components of all those microbes from our microbiome, and we lost what it is they were doing, what we lost is resilience, the ability to bend. They bend, we break. And the second thing that's happened is what we call the exposome. All the stresses, whether they're chemical or emotional, all that we are exposed to on a day-to-day basis. So we lost our resilience, and the stresses went up. And what we're seeing is a tripling of inflammatory conditions. 1 in 4 children now has eczema. Follow that child for 5 years, 90% are carrying an inhaler, and they have 1 or more food allergies. So we've taken on this task of starting with a reference point. How do we restore what's missing, and what impact does that have on our resilience? And we're continuing to learn. I've said this many times, but I think it's worth repeating. The biggest myth of the microbiome is that we know anything about it yet. It's still very early. And none of us have any claim on certainty.
Mm-hmm.
So we've been able to take this information and start translating it and working, with some really interesting academic and industry collaborators here. We've submitted a bunch of this work for publication. And what I'm really excited about is not how far we've come, but what's in front of us.
I know. And like, I've been, an acne nutritionist for, I think I'm starting to lose count, since about 2017. And it's only been recent where the skin microbiome has become more trendy, I could say, on social media, right? Where a lot of us has been talking about the skin microbiome for years, especially you doing so much research for, decades at this point. But now that's becoming a more of a trend where people are understanding that we have a skin microbiome. Could you really just lay it out for everybody? Explain what a microbiome really is when it comes to your skin, because we know we have one in our gut, but we're just starting, the general public is just starting to learn that we also have it topically.
Great way to start. Okay. The first thing is, let's talk about the microbiome in general, and then let's go to skin. So generally, when someone asks what the microbiome is, they get an answer of, these are all the microbes that live on or in you. And to be honest, it's not a particularly satisfying answer for most people for at least three reasons, one of which is it's invisible. So I'm now asking you to form a concept around this thing which is invisible to you. And generally, that's kind of the purview of religion, and people have a hard time with that. The second piece is everything that we've been told is about our relationship with the microbial world is it's trying to make us sick and kill us. And that's absolutely not correct. It's in fact essential for our health. All of these relationships that we do not yet understand and these connections. The biggest thing I've learned from working in the microbiome is everything is connected. And the third reason is they then go to Google and get all kinds of nonsense and answers, and it covers the entire spectrum and leaves people confused. Let me make it simple. Your microbiome is you. You just can't see it or feel it. It's as much you as the parts you can see or feel, as your heart and your lungs and your liver and all these other pieces that are part of a system. And I want you to think of it as a system, not it's me and my microbiome. It is an intact system. And so that is the first thing I would like people to start stretching their head around. The second thing is that bacteria have been around on this planet for over 4 billion years. They're the most successful life form on this planet. Animals didn't show up until about 400 million years ago, and primates maybe 7 or 8 million, and Homo sapiens maybe 400,000. We're not the pinnacle of evolution. We're these spoiled and arrogant newcomers. We're the beneficiaries of a 4 billion-year-old trust fund upon which we depend for our very survival, and we seem determined to squander. So treat it as wonder. Science is a disciplined practice of wonder, and embrace the uncertainty. Everything that we think that we know today, the things that we really think that we know, if we're fortunate, are going to be a gross oversimplification of something that is still yet beyond our imagination. And some of it's going to be wrong. And that's how we advance our understanding. So instead of saying, I have to understand everything going on in this 4 billion-year-old complex system and able to do anything about it, we've taken the different approach and said, what does an intact microbiome look like? What is it doing? How does that interact with our immune system and everything else? And those are the explorations that need to happen. And again, it's a very different approach. I would tell you it's complementary to the approach that we have. But for today, it is the one about which the least is yet known, and it has the most promise. Okay, so your skin microbiome, here's what we have learned from our studies. The way we study the microbiome is we use a swab or a tape, we sample the DNA, and then we sequence the DNA, and we use our libraries to understand who's there and what their metabolic capacity is. And that's an oversimplification, but it's enough. This is how we read the code. Now, keep in mind, those methods are still changing. They're better than they've ever been in the past, but they are worse than they will ever be in the future. And we will learn things as our methods get better. Don't think it's going to make things simpler. It's going to increase the complexity. That's what makes science so exciting. The part that we have measured on us, on you and me, and all the skin studies that have been published are essentially on industrialized Homo sapiens. And that part is actually engrafted into your tissue. So when you're born, There's the first species, generally, that come from the vaginal microbiome at birth, and they start colonizing your skin. And over the next couple of years, through skin-to-skin contact with the mother and the father as well, that ecosystem will become fully populated. And those species live in your skin. If you wash them off, if you use an antiseptic, you can remove them, but they're going to grow back. It's like the weeds in a natural ecosystem. Those things are there, and they're there for a purpose. And what we think that purpose is, and it does a lot of things, but two of which we know about, are the first one is, it's called colonization resistance. This protects us from invasion from other species. And what it is, basically keep that ecosystem so fully populated with the bugs that are so well adapted that an outsider can't get a foothold. Think of it like a rent-controlled New York City apartment building. You can't move in because nobody is moving out. And relative abundance, as we look at this, will change over time and depending on what you're doing with your skin and your diet. But no one's leaving. And it's very, very difficult. No one has actually demonstrated that we can engraft someone new in there yet. It'll probably happen, but it hasn't happened yet. It's hard to do. The piece that we lost, that none of us have, is we spent most of this time on this planet as foragers. We lived in the environment and we foraged. We sampled all sorts of different foods and different environments. And with that, we harmonized our microbiome with the environment in which we lived. And if you look at the piece that we lost in terms of its function, and what we have found is it has a lot of functions, but there's two very big ones, and one of which is protecting us from oxidation. Oxidation is a chemical process. We don't have to go into deal. Think of it as rusting. That's what oxidation is. But oxidation and inflammation are two perspectives on exactly the same process. The chemist in me looks at it and sees oxidation. I see electrons flowing. You don't have to imagine that, but I do. The immunologist in me sees inflammation. But we are looking at the same thing. We just haven't connected all of those things yet. And so the microbiome that we lost protected us from that. We live in an oxygen environment. We're bathed in ultraviolet. Bacteria solved this problem 2.7 billion years ago. And just as a hint, they didn't solve it by evolving sunscreen. The second thing that we lost is there's all these secondary metabolic pathways in the microbes that we lost. In fact, I just mentioned one to you with the retinoids. And we don't have them. And 25% of them are gone. And many of them made things that we need and don't make for ourselves. So if you look at the overall loss here, we are rusting and we're starving. And I believe we are going to discover that rusting, starving skin is involved in all of these inflammatory diseases we have in the skin. Acne, eczema, rosacea, and psoriasis. This is what it looks like when you don't have that protection from oxidation and the skin have all sorts of metabolic nourishment that they're not getting.
And I love that you said it's rusting, starving skin. Because when we throw around words like inflammation and oxidative stress and all of these bigger words, it's the average person, it's kind of like, oh, yeah, oxidation, inflammation. But when you say rusting, starving skin, it really hits home because it's essentially what's happening, where now we're dealing with these massive amounts of those inflammatory skin conditions because of what you just talked about.
A visual.
Yeah. And look, it's still early, but the patterns are starting to emerge and converge. And there's a lot of work to do. But we can start looking at the things that we have been doing in a new light. So one response would be, well, I've got an antioxidant in my skincare. It's got some vitamin E and some vitamin C in there. And there's no doubt those things provide some benefit. But the system is way more complicated than that. Okay. It's just, our willingness to think that there is going to be a single bullet, a single compound, a single intervention that can fix what we have lost. From the perspective where we're standing and looking at the complexity of the piece that is lost, I think that is highly unlikely.
Mm-hmm.
And so we are starting with what did it look like? What do we look like? Build a precision ferment. Don't try to put the live bacteria back. I'm the only one who has ever really done that with Mother Dirt. I'll tell you, it's very hard. And it's not necessary. I don't need the bug. I need what they did. And even if I put it back, it would be gone very quickly because we're harmonized with the environment we live in, and we live in a built environment. We spend 90% of our time indoors. And the final piece I'll add to this is the incidence of inflammatory disease across the spectrum is increasing. As I said, it's tripled in the past 30 years. What I just described with eczema, that's not the childhood you guys remember. I'm older than you, but those types of problems. And now, because they are the gut-brain axis and all of these things are all telling us that we have lost that resilience, and that has consequences. Autism spectrum disorder, 1 in 36 today. I'm going to use a little parable that I borrowed from David Foster Wallace, if I might, to help illustrate this. These two young fish are swimming along, and an older fish comes swimming in the other direction and says, hey, boys, how's the water? And they swim on for a little bit, and then one looks at the other and says, what's water? We are those two young fish. The water is this ancient, global, microbial planet that we live on, that we were deeply connected to, but has remained invisible to us. And the voice of the older fish is this growing burden of inflammatory disease that is trying to get our attention and do something about this while there's still a chance to do it. So we need to translate the science into things that people can incorporate into their life that makes sense. And that's done through parable and metaphor and story, but also through education. Chemistry, understanding just the very basics of chemistry is not that hard. And, it'll take some time for us to do that, but it'll give you a chance to do really what everyone wants to do. They want to be able to make better decisions. You want to decide, look, I have two daughters.
Lucky you.
I am.
Absolutely.
And they are, and I have grandchildren as well.
Aww.
And when my daughters go to buy something, they text me the label, because you're all reading labels, aren't you?
We're all reading labels. You got to read the label.
Got to read the label. 10 years ago, that was not the case.
No way.
And they text me the label and they say, is this okay? And the short answer I have for them is, we don't know. Do you need that? They don't like that. But that's the
They're
truth.
like, Dad, just tell me, do I buy it or not?
And look, here's something that is worth considering, especially Chris, with your resistance to applying concoctions to your skin. We're all doing science experiments on ourselves, whether we know it or not, when we buy a new product. Is this going to work for us? I have a hypothesis. I hope this is going to work for us. Maybe it's not. Is it going to make things worse? And what do we know about it? And so without thinking about it that way, when we go and buy when a product is released in the marketplace, before it's released, every responsible company tests it to see whether it's going to be irritating or sensitizing. They make sure that there are no contaminants and other things in the formula. But you know what we can't do? What happens if you like it and you're going to use it daily for months, maybe years, maybe on your children? Considering how different everyone's routine and practice and life is, we can't answer the question, is this good? Is it bad? Is it going to have consequences in the long run that we can't anticipate yet? We don't have methods with which to do this. So with this brand, with Symbiome, what I've done in formulating it, right here in this place behind me, is use biologically intact materials. Don't manipulate them. They are perfectly optimized by literally billions of years of
by
biology.
nature itself.
By nature itself. And as few as possible. Treat it the same way, Michael Pollan's recommendation about food. Mostly plants, not too much, and a diversity of these things. So this is what we have tried to do. Keep the ingredient set as limited as possible. Keep them with biologically intact materials. Don't reach into it and try to pull out the active ingredient. The active ingredient is already packaged and accompanied by all the things that biology sent it off with to actually get the work done. And then pay attention to how these response and build the tools with which to understand how you're responding to it, and talk to people who are using it and get all of their impact, and continue year after year, day after day, year after year, to do better. We can always do better.
And I think your thought process of it comes, you don't need to be pulling these potent, active ingredients out. They're packaged perfectly well. And I think this is why Chris loves your product so much, was because that's exactly what it is. You didn't go and start pulling all of these things apart. And before we had you on the show, Larry, we actually had our esthetician look at the ingredients. We're like, hey, can you take this from an aesthetics perspective? And she's like, I'm so impressed with the ingredients that they use and how few ingredients that they used. So we were like, she really loved to see that you didn't have to overcomplicate it, right? You took what nature has. And I think that's something Chris really resonated with as well.
Thanks. I think it's, it is our humility. Science, as I said, science is a disciplined practice of wonder. It's driven by our curiosity and our desire to make things better. But it needs to be tempered by a very deep sense of humility. Our knowledge is finite and our ignorance is infinite. And if we approach the problem this way, and I'm completely transparent with you to tell you that we're continuing to do research, and I might learn something tomorrow, next month, next year. And with that, some of the things that we've thought we knew will change and evolve. That's how we learn. There's a general belief that scientists, that the substance of our work are immutable facts and truths. That's not correct. What we do is we build a model, and we ask some questions, and we use the best tools we can get our hands on to answer those questions. We get evidence, data. And then if we're honest, we fix the model. We update the model. We ask more questions. We go around and around and around. And the best that we can hope for, as I said, is that something that we think we know is a gross oversimplification of something still yet beyond our imagination, and some of it's going to be wrong. And that is the process. So we don't, as I said, have a right to certainty. And in fact, when someone expresses certainty, I find a little certainty in myself, which is certain that they're probably wrong, because it's still very early in this science. So we learn from our customers. We are trying to build essentially a community of customers, of users, of humans who want to get healthy and want to get healthy together. You see, we talk about systems in this company. We are solving a systems biology problem. This is why the microbiome is so transformative. The life sciences today is where physics was 100 years ago. And you can imagine these classical physics with their nice buttoned up equations, watching Einstein and his oncoming chaos and dismissing it as either wrong or irrelevant. They even wrote a book called 100 Authors Against Einstein, to which he responded, if I'm wrong, why do you need more than one? And it wasn't that classical physics is wrong. It's just a small part of a much larger, much more dimensional problem that they couldn't yet imagine. And that kind of pattern. So now we've opened up a window into most of what the life, this is a microbial planet. Most of the life on this planet is microbial, and it's ancient. And we now can look into that window and acknowledge that since we emerged from this, and we don't understand this, if we cut the connections with a wellspring of our resilience, that will have health implications. But we can, as a community, commit ourselves to to say, we need to know more. And the person who's going to transform the field that I am working in tomorrow probably doesn't work in my field today. And so we need to have an open mind. We need to listen to each other. We need to engage in respectful, civil, scholarly discourse and learn together, because the fact is we're either all sick together or we're all healthy together. The system is beyond just you and your body and your family, and that it is very hard to be healthy. It may be impossible to be healthy in a sick community. And so it's got a bigger thing. I'm not really in the skincare business. I'm in the health business. I'm in the restoring resilience business, so we have less disease to treat. So we're on fewer medications, and our kids live healthier lives.
And this is a perfect segue, because a question that's been sitting in the back of my mind for you, Larry, is, you are a medical doctor, you have decades and decades of research and knowledge and in the healthcare and so much knowledge. And I'm curious, what led you to want to take all of your knowledge and your training and put it into skincare, to focus on the skin's microbiome, when so many in your position would have taken a different route?
Simple. The skin is the biomarker, the window into your health that you see in the mirror every day. And 2/3 of us look in the mirror and see something we want to fix, and the other third are liars. But you know that it's true, because on days when you feel good, you see that in the mirror. And on days when you don't feel good, you see that too. And so the reason I chose skin is, if it's working and when it works, now I have your attention. Okay, now I can start a conversation. Why is this different? If I have to educate you first, we're all too busy. And there's a lot of reasons why that's a very steep hill to climb. But if I get your attention with skin, so that's the first reason. The second thing is, we talk about skin being the largest organ in your body. And when I was in medical school, it said it's 1.7 meters square. Well, it would be if it was flat, but it's not. The follicular volume, all the sweat glands and the hair follicles, the estimate, this comes out of Rich Gallo's lab, is somewhere about 25 meters squared, about the same as the area of your gut or your lungs. It's a huge area, and it is completely colonized with bacteria who are there providing an important function. So while everyone was working on the gut, to me, what looked like an interesting, if we're going to have an impact, we need to take what we've learned and start looking for what we call a signal. Is it making a difference? Is it making a difference to you? And I'll tell you why that's so important. Because if you don't see that it's making a difference to you, in a little while, you're going to stop using it. And then it won't make any difference at all. It doesn't matter what I see in a laboratory. What matters what you see in the mirror. But if I can do that, I can change behavior. Look, we've talked a lot of very big ideas here today, and I could do this indefinitely. So
I could listen indefinitely.
Chris is sitting, when Chris is silent, it's because she's nerding out right now. She is so excited with everything that you said. She's like, yes, just keep talking.
Minerals
and I know,
are my thing, yeah.
Chris, I know you have a slew of questions for him. So I'm going to step back and let you ask him one.
Okay, first, Larry, how are we not friends? I love you. Let's just put it right out there to the world. I am so excited to
Chris has a new best friend.
I do. Here's something interesting. My kids will say, Mom, you don't have any friends. And I said, I do. I'm very selective now in who I put into my environment. So when, Katie pokes fun and she says, well, what are you putting on your skin? And I'm like, well, the first ingredient's water. I can get it from the tap. I have clean water. I've made sure I have a source of clean water. So why am I going to use a product that's going to give me water? Right? So I come from almost, maybe my brain doesn't stop enough in order. I love the way you say, why? Let's step back. Let's step back. When I'm working with clients, I say, okay, this is what's going on. Let's go further. When I'm teaching, when I'm coaching other coaches, whatever, I'm like, what are we missing? Okay, I understand that we have acne. I understand the quality of the skin is compromised. What are we missing? What's the quality health of the eyes? What's the quality health of the skin? What's the quality health of the color? Is there discoloration? Where's the hair lining? Where's all of these things? I love telling people we're more bacteria than human DNA. So why are we why are we feeding the wrong colonies? Why are we not taking care of ourselves? Because if you're willing to put those 1,400 products on your face, or you're going to go and have a group of friends, when you leave, you feel terrible about yourself. If you're not going to control your entire environment, and when I say control, I don't mean like micro needle it on, but I mean, like, if we're not going to invest, that's a better word, if we're not going to invest in what we put into our entire environment, and we're not going to step back, you said it, you're like, we've lost one, but how many others have we lost? That statement to me in English is opportunity. And if we don't take the opportunities, we miss the point. So Larry, keep talking because I'm drooling. I love it.
So let me make a suggestion here. Here's a word that I think about a lot. Curate your environment. Curate
love it.
your friends.
Yep.
We have this amazing instrument, which is our consciousness and our awareness and our empathy with each other. And we need to learn to curate that, point that at things which are healthy.
Yeah.
So it's very noisy out there. Claims, all sorts of confusion. It's very easy to get confused and withdraw, but it's a practice. And so find the things that work for you. Now, I want to say something else interesting, because we are not a, treat acne, we're not a treatment program. We're a resilience restoring program. We're a health restoring program. And it's easy to say that, but it's complicated. Even wellness is a disease notion. It is the idea that all these things are out there, and if I do things, I can forestall their inevitability. The deep thesis behind everything we're doing is that these diseases, as I said, evolution doesn't make them. We did that ourselves. We have an opportunity if we are thoughtful and we devote the time and effort to find ways to restore lost resilience. And when we do that, there'll be less of it. Look, there's a general belief right now that we are raising the first generation of children who are going to live shorter, sicker lives than their parents. That's not acceptable to me. We have to look into this. And here is a totally non-controversial statement. At some point, everything we eat, everything we put on our skin, our agriculture, and most things about our healthcare are going to be transformed for the better by things we still have yet to learn about the microbiome. We're not there yet. As I said, it's still very early. And the presumption that we already know the answer to these things is something that we should resist. But our interest and our excitement on this has to translate into actually doing the work. Not just going out there and selling products that use the language of the microbiome or make claims that are, those of us who are doing the work, we hope someday we know that stuff, but we don't know it yet. And so a commitment to scientific and scholarly and human integrity has to underpin these efforts for all of us, not just for us as companies or scientists or people in the field, but for all of us as members of a community who are concerned about our health and the health of our families and the health of our kids. And Chris, I applaud you for the work that you're doing. It's hard to change behavior. This is another reason I chose skin, by the way. Changing what people put in their mouths is hard.
Yeah. Okay. You're telling us as nutritionists.
Yeah, there's this amazing book by Michael Moss. I highly recommend it to everyone. It's called Salt, Sugar, and Fat.
Oh, it's a great book. Yeah, love that one.
And Michael did something amazing. He got the people who developed a lot of these ultra-processed foods to talk on the record. And overwhelmingly, they said, I don't want my family to eat this stuff. Okay, and we have allowed ourselves to hand over the responsibility for this to people whose only concern is the bottom line on this. And look, don't get me wrong. You need to have a healthy bottom line, because if you don't have a sustainable business, it doesn't matter what you're doing, it's not going to work. But you can support that, having a ethical, responsible commitment to the health and well-being of your customers. We give away adverse side effects to the products that we know and love every day of the week. You want to see the future of chronic disease in America? Walk down the center aisle of the grocery store. But it's not obligatory that we do that. If we understand health, we can make products where we give away beneficial side effects every day of the week. We're not there yet, but we should get there. And so the people who are actually changing the world are you. Women of reproductive age with families who are concerned about the health of their families and want to make better decisions in the marketplace make 80% of the buying decisions. Now, here's the problem. If I have to educate you there, as I said, we're all too busy. And ideas can change human behavior, but it's very, very hard to do that. But products change behavior quickly, and they do it every single day of the week. And my favorite example of that is right here, your phone.
Absolutely.
My phone is turned off. It's rewiring my brain while we're talking anyway. My phone knows more about me than my doctor does. All of these things are, this thing has changed our behavior. Some things for the better, some things for the worse. We'll all have opinions on these. What if we can design products that you can interact with that not only have beneficial side effects? When I restore resilience, the benefits will have a halo effect. But also start healthy conversations.
Mm-hmm.
How do I make better decisions? How do I interpret the data? How do I read these claims? How do I make a responsible decision? Am I being convinced to add a dozen or 30 or 40 new ingredients to my skin by an advertisement that I don't even really believe? And all of those types of questions, we start by doing something different. So one of the core ingredients in what we make here is curiosity. It's not on the label, but this is different. How is it different? Why is it different? Why should I care? And how do I get more of this? How do I get more of that resilience so I have a healthy family and live a healthy life? Look, 6 out of 10 of us are on medication for one inflammatory disease.
Mm-hmm.
4 out of 10 are on medication for 2, and there is now a new diagnosis called multiple chronic conditions. And 25% of Americans, men, women, and children, qualify for that diagnosis. Not acceptable. The average, our life expectancy, mid-70s. The average of us will take 15,000 pharmaceuticals to get there. 15,000. That's just the pharmaceuticals. That's just the prescription medications. If you add the over-the-counter and other stuff in, it gets much bigger. That's not acceptable.
Unacceptable. It's unacceptable.
So it's happening at younger ages, right? Because as we evolve in society and we get that quick fix, that antibiotic, if something's going to coin it as a miracle to eradicate your illness, doesn't it sound like something I want to take? Sign us up. So even that is marketed well. At the end of the day, small children are taking these. We didn't start taking these. My parents didn't take me to the doctor unless it was in desperation. And now it's like, oh my gosh, you have a sore finger? Okay, let's go to the doctor, right? We have such an opportunity to look and reevaluate, 1, the education system, 2, again, curate into our environment and how we want to deliver that message. And 3, for the love of goodness, everybody always asks me, what's my root cause? And I said, it's simple, it's stress. It's something that is stressing your body to create inflammation, and then you're going to get signs and symptoms, and from there you're going to get disease and illness. Well, guess what? They don't like that answer, Larry. They don't like it. However, it's accurate because there's something that's stressing your vessel in order for it to retaliate, because that's what it does. You come into my home and you're not invited. I tend to retaliate, get out of my home. So those are just the small things. As I know we're talking about different skincare and different things, but we have to kind of step back and we have to allow that curiosity to say, is this okay? Is it not okay? Why is it okay? Why is it not okay? When we start allowing ourselves to ask the question why, because for years we've been do not ask why. Don't be rude. Don't do this. And now I don't know if you've seen the millennials, but I don't know if there's any other question but why. But it's to get what they want. It's not to, it's only to challenge the system to get what they want versus challenge the system to understand why it's needed. So I'll leave it there. I could go on for that forever. However, I really just truly really value how you're doing that. I also love anything nerdy and minerals and all that kind of stuff. So
yeah, I want to emphasize diet. I do. Again, we are a system. We are not divided up into discrete little components according to the petty distinctions of the academic departments in medical schools.
Right.
We are a system. And so curate what you put in your mouth. Try to make good decisions. And by the way, I know that's hard. Look, I live in Northern California. I can get great food year round. I'm privileged and grateful for it that's available here. It should be available everywhere. In the richest country of the world, there's no reason we should be eating all of this food, which is absolutely making us sick. But that's going to be a process that's going to require some time because, look, the pharmaceutical industry spends north of $50 billion a year on advertising, telling us our stories, telling us to go and ask our doctor for this. We're now putting children on biologics for atopic dermatitis. We don't know what the long-term consequences are of this, and we have a history of discovering long-term consequences long after a substantial amount of damage is done, and I think we need to do better. But we could possibly avoid so much of this just by making better decisions. And doing that is going to require some work. But as I said, there is a huge motivation right now. I know this because, as I said, it is largely women of it's largely women of a reproductive age who are seeing things in their children that were not part of their childhood and are frankly scared. And why are they going to the doctor? Because they're really scared. We have all sorts of very powerful tools in our hands for medicine, but we need to be very much more circumspect about how we use them and why we use them. And part of the challenge is there's huge economic incentives that are biasing how and why and how we apportion these things out. So don't get me wrong. This is very hard work. I've taken on a tiny little piece of it here because what I'm trying to do is, one, really make a difference, but also start those conversations. I want to inspire all of you. Curate the information, curate the things I was asked recently a question of how can I tell if I have a healthy microbiome? Well, as I just told you, we have a depleted microbiome, so it's not exactly healthy. But the simplest way to do that is it's in the mirror. It's the way you feel. Your skin and your microbiome are an integrated system. Your skin microbiome doesn't exist without your skin, and your skin doesn't exist without a microbiome. So when we take those apart, when we use a reductionist approach, that's an abstraction to help us try to understand something that's complicated. But in fact, in doing it, we change it. And it's not a reflection of what the entire system. Think of it as an entire integrated system. And if your skin looks and feels good in the mirror, you have, for you and your life, a balanced microbiome. We do not understand enough to go anything past that yet. I hope someday that we do. If I were to sequence your microbiome, for the most part, I'm not going to get any more information than I would from a good clinical exam. And, the tests are hugely biased. I'll give you a great example of this. The National Institute of Standards and Technology, their job is to standardize our tests that we use, whether it's in medicine or commerce or whatever. And because there's so many biases in the way that we do our studies. So I run a swab on you. Okay, there's a sampling bias. If I run it again a different way, I might get a different sample. Then we extract the DNA out of that. But there's all kinds of different ways of doing that because some bacteria surrender their DNA easily and others, you really have to break them open. And if you work hard to break those open, you might smash the other DNA up into little pieces. And there's all sorts of formulas, and each one introduces a bias. And then we do a thing called library prep, which is a fancy way of saying we tag it so we can read it, and then we read it, and then we interpret it. Every single step along that way introduces bias. And as I said, our tests are better than they've ever been, but they're worse than they'll ever be.
Mm-hmm.
And so NIST recently published a study where they took stool samples. They have a standardized consortium that they have built. This is a standard sample that they have built over 5 years. And they sent it to 7 different labs that do consumer microbiome testing. And so they all got the same sample. In fact, they all got the same sample 3 times under different names. And they sequenced them. And it was a scattergram. In many of the labs, the differences between the 3 different runs on the same sample were as great as the differences between different laboratories. And which is to say, it's still very early. That's what it's telling us. So those tools, we need to continue to work on those. We need to invest on getting better tools, better ways of understanding this. But in the meantime, it's in the mirror. If your skin looks and feels good, chances are what you're doing is working for you. There's no guarantee that something you're doing isn't going to accumulate over years. It's subclinical. You can be inflamed, but not so inflamed that you can see it. And if that accumulates over time, that is the thing that contributes to what we consider to be aging. We're all rusting. Some of us are rusting faster than others. And if you have oxidation and rusting and inflammation going on in your gut and in your mouth and on your skin, it's all going to contribute. It all converges around your physiology and manifests itself in different ways. This is why, as I said, it resists the simple explanation. Because one of the things I feel very comfortable with is it's complicated. It's very complicated. But the other thing is that doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. We have to do it. We can't have ourselves and our families and our kids getting sick. You know, in each one of the products that we have, and I know that my people are going to say, you better start talking about the products here.
But we can tell you love the research that you do, right?
This is why I do it. I have been incredibly fortunate in the people I encountered along the way, along my training and my practice and my research, to work with some of the most talented, inspiring, brilliant, and humble scientists. And I want to make sure with this gift that I've been given, and also other members of our team who also have similarly gotten here through that kind of a journey, that we repay that gift, because the job at hand is bigger than any of us.
Mm-hmm.
We owe it to all of us. This health belongs to all of us. We're either all healthy together or we're not. Anyway, that is how we got here, and what we do with this. I want to start with a couple of things if we have time. One of which is we talk about cleansing your skin. Okay. And a lot of people think that the sebum, the oil on their skin, is some toxic inflammatory substance that causes problems like acne. That is there to protect your skin. That is, we have cells called sebocytes, and their job is literally to sacrifice their lives to make sebum. The way it works is they don't secrete the stuff on an ongoing basis. The cell starts as a stem cell. It's triggered to turn into a sebocyte. It grows all sorts of all the components of sebum and little vacuoles, and then the cell lyses and releases them. And that's a process that takes some time. When we take a harsh cleanser and we wash it off, this triggers sebocytes to go, now where's the protection layer? I need to make some more. And it ramps it up. If you want to do an experiment, which you don't, by the way, to prove this, stop washing your hair and see how long you can take it. Because over years and years of doing this, what's happened is there's a pattern of production of sebum It's adopted to the fact that you're going to take a detergent and wash it away. That stuff is there to protect your head and your hair. The indigenous tribes, one, they don't lose the hair, and two, they don't have gray hair. We built a cleanser that is based on these fermented oils that, look, if you apply things like makeup, sunscreen, at the end of the day, that has to be washed off. You don't want to sleep with that stuff on. Those things have all sorts of compounds in it that the exposure through at night is generally not a good idea. So we built a cleanser that is oil soluble because it's based on these fermented oils. And when you're done, it's basically it's the renewal cleanser. It's got the consistency of honey. Here's my suggestion. This is what I do. This is one of my favorite products. Smear it on dry skin. Let it sit there a couple of minutes, as long as you want. When you rinse it off with water, it's going to form a milky emulsion, and it's going to leave a oil composition that's very close to sebum there. So it starts slowing down that cycle and brings that cycle into normalization. The second one that I use is the Answer Serum. It's not just our microbiome that's stressed, but our cells. We have plenty of stem cells. If we didn't have stem cells, we wouldn't see the renewal of our skin. And skin renewal times, like in an infant, can be 3 to 4 weeks. Everything you see will be renewed within 3 to 4 weeks. By the time you're old as I am, it's measured in months. The stem cells, which are the source of all of this, are similarly stressed. They're similarly oxidizing. They're similarly deprived of the components, the essential fatty acids and this fat-soluble vitamins that our microbiome used to provide. By putting these ferments in there, we're restoring some of that. And the answer is 50% human stem cell conditioned media. No cells, just the food to make sure your stem cells are healthy and active and can actually restore your skin. And the third thing that I use is the One Cream. And I'm particularly proud of this. This is a plant that is unique to us from the Amazon. It's called Sonoma. It is a incredibly interesting plant. These things are fermented and then the oil is extracted. So now it has all of the metabolic products from that fermentation, many of which fill in the gap from what we've lost. And it is in a unique emulsion that is created by bacteria. I routinely hear from cosmetic formulas that you can't make an emulsion with those ingredients. And I tell them I agree. I can't do that. Bacteria have been doing it forever. Why don't we just let them teach us how to do it? And so all of these things fill in this metabolic component. And that is the pattern. And Chris, I was like you, I'm a guy. Guys tend to use much fewer of these things because having a multi-step process seems like work. But having a process which is actually simple and easy and delivers results on this is a very compelling proposition. And what we are doing with these products, these ingredients, this formulation, and this data set, we're the only ones who are doing it. This was hard. This was many, many years of research to bring this. And I promise you we're going to continue to do better with it.
I love it. Like I said at the beginning, Chris is now a diehard fan. She's obsessed with Symbiome. And I should also say I also am, but I've just been highlighting Chris because everybody knows she doesn't use skincare. But I know you were raving about the One Cream, Chris. You're like, I need this on my body at all times.
Oh, for the eyes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, this one, the one or the luminary?
I don't know what it's called. I'm not there, Larry. I'm not there. She's for
baby
Chris.
Steps with her. She just knows what order to apply this thing.
Chris did absolutely go step 1, step 2, step 3. There might have been a 16-year-old to guide me through these steps. However, I am here. It's a little tiny nugget of a bottle with a yellow cream inside. And I am telling you, I need that for every orifice of my body because as soon as I apply it a little bit under my eyes, and I have Hashimoto's, so I naturally have puffy eyes, yay. And then I just put it in here. Everything just goes, and like, oh, good morning. and my eyes feel oh, I just love it. Just love it.
Even my husband's trying to steal it.
That never gets old.
Oh, I'm just telling you, like, and whether I am or not like a skincare kind of person, I like the way the product goes on. I like how it doesn't have any, here's all the things of why, Katie, Chris is not one of these, I don't like the way most skincares feel, or they feel like my skin isn't real. This is the same reason I don't wear makeup. People say, well, why don't you wear makeup if you're podcasting? Because guess what? I don't have to, is my answer. I don't have to, simply. So if you feel I need to, that doesn't actually, that's not my problem. It's kind of, where I go with it. So I put stuff on and I love it. And then I take that, I think it was the first cream, or there's also like an oil. And oh my gosh, and I just do a little bit of my yoga. Oh, it's so
It's a beautiful
nice. Oil. It's beautiful. It goes right in. You can feel it actually going into the skin, so the skin feels real. But even if I'm doing this right now, I can feel like my skin is protected. So protected skin is fantastic. How many times a day, especially if we have pesky flies, how many times a day do we touch our face? How many times a day do we put electronics and other contractors to our face of just another set of something that doesn't need to be there? All of these different things. So I'm impressed. Simply, one, the ingredients. Two, oh my gosh, hands down, the presentation. When that box came, I took pictures of it.
It was a beautiful presentation that the box arrives in.
And I thought, oh, they've been doing their research on their marketing for their colors, for the essence of how they're delivering it, because 80% of purchasers are women. So kudos to there.
Like, so pretty.
I saw it right there. So, but that's how I look at things, right? And I just wanted to, so thanks for creating this, because I'm definitely sold. Like I said, if you just, I was joking, if you have an IV, it'd just be a lot easier. I'd just say 5 minutes in the bathroom, Larry, but whatever.
Symbiome IVs coming next.
I'm committed.
So look, you said a couple of things here that I want to touch on. One is the absorption. And the way that these ingredients, these plants are sustainably harvested, they're from the Brazilian Amazon, and then the fermentation can take anywhere from weeks to months. But the fatty acid and triglyceride composition of these oils, skin is an oily environment. So that's why we pull off the centrifuge off the oils. The fatty acid and triglyceride composition of these oils is very similar to the fatty acid and triglyceride composition of sebum. And I don't think that that is an accident by any means. There is convergence in evolution, and these are incredibly complex structures. It's not just a bunch of molecules floating around randomly. They form all sorts of liquid crystalline substructures like sheets and tiny little vesicles. And so that structure and our skin have spent a lot of time together, because that's part of the sebum. So the movement of molecules through this, yes, if I just take a hyaluronic acid molecule and I put it on the skin, it's probably not going to go very far. But there's all sorts of things that once they're packaged in this context, in these fatty acids, they form these tiny little microvesicles, and those things go anywhere. Those are, I think of them like the text messaging system of biology. They can go pretty much anywhere. And like I said, we're just beginning to understand this, but I don't have to understand how it's working. I need to know what it looked like before we damaged it. And so that is a very different approach. And look, I love a good mechanism of action. They come from that world. But I've watched a lot of really what we call elegant mechanisms of action surrender to the fact that the whole system was much more complicated than that. And it wasn't just, oh, that is what's causing this. That is part of a system that responds in a certain way. It may even be a crucial part of that, but it's not the entire system. And so for all of these reasons, the materials in here, the sensory experience that you get. Oh, by the way, this is one of my favorites. This is our recharge, our S02, and as you can see, it's kind of like a highly colored, red orange. And what that is this is a product of the microbial fermentation. And these are all these carotenoids. And carotenoids are the things that colors things like, well, carrots comes from. There's a whole lot of them, but there's an enzyme in there that cuts those in half, and then it forms retinoids. And it said, not just the ones we're familiar with, but an entire spectrum of these things. So every time I get the sort of, oh, I think I understand it because I've seen this little piece, it's like I see a couple of points in a row, and there's an instinct that we all have to draw a line through it. But there's a lot of points we don't see yet. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of lines that are interconnected on this. So whereas it's fun to discover an insight into it, it's important that we continue to do that. Again, we need to remember that until we know better, leave it the way evolution left it. Do it responsibly. Do it ethically. Do it within all of the appropriate guidelines, but don't start taking it apart. And this is a very reductionist approach that, that is part and parcel with a lot of the discovery. And we do this for an obvious reason. We take complicated systems that we don't understand. We have to take them apart into smaller pieces so we can understand. But when we do that and we put whatever we've made back into the system, the complexity will reassert itself in ways that are always going to be surprising. And this notion that we can take things out of context is so deeply ingrained. We took ourselves out of context. So I could blame Descartes for this. When he said, because we think we're differently, I think, therefore I am, he turned us into, okay, we're separate from everything. We're a noun. We're looking at all these other things, and we have dominion over them. And I think we need to start recalibrating that. But it's so deeply ingrained. I'm going to show you this. I'll illustrate it for you personally. I'm going to give you a word. I want you to call forth an image in your head. Don't tell me what the image is. Ready? Okay, here's your word. Nature. Any people in any of your images?
No.
Okay, so I've done this in front of 3,000 people. I've done it in front of people. I've done it in front of 4 or 5 times, and still no hands go up. We took ourselves out of context, and it's not a healthy image. Our perspective of us as being apart from rather than a part of the biology from which we emerged is enabling all sorts of dangerous and unhealthy behaviors. We need to start figuring out, how do we reconnect? How do we reintegrate? How do we become more of a part of the nature from which we emerged? And when we do that, that's also going to contribute to our resilience, which will contribute to our ability to respond to stress without breaking.
This was incredible, Larry. I feel like we could do like a 3-day summit just on the microbiome of the skin with you. We would sell tickets. Fun. It would be great. I think that's a future project we should work on, because this was such an informative episode. And I know so many of our listeners are nerds, right? They love this information. They love the science. And I think when you're looking for skincare that's truly going to make a difference, you're investing in the science and the decades of research behind it when you put it on your face, because you want to make that informed decision. And if the things you're putting on your face, you want to invest in things that are going to make a difference and start working to really repair the skin barrier, repair the microbiome. And I think Symbiome has really just hit the nail on the head across the board with the simplicity, the wholeness of the ingredients, and all of the, the knowledge of the science behind the product. So I was so excited to have you on today.
Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me. And watch for this. It's coming.
What is it, Larry? I need to know because I'm going to add it to cart.
I'm just going to leave it at that for right now. It's coming shortly. Oh my gosh,
you're killing me. I'm going to be refreshing the website.
All I have to say, Larry, is you did not do any justice here for Katie giving me her products now. Like
I'm not giving it to you.
You totally sold her too. Like, come on, Larry. I thought we were on the same team.
I'm using mine actively. I'm trying to bat my husband away from them because even he likes them. But I'm going to be checking out your website, which is Symbiome. You can find you guys on Instagram at Symbiome Skin, online at symbiome.com. And I highly recommend going and checking out the collections, because I love, Larry, that you guys have some really great curated collections that are very simple, right? There's 3 products, these 3, nice and simple, easy peasy.
Yeah, there's Kate's Kit, which is curated by Kate Hudson, who found us organically and has been a huge supporter. She's a creative brand advisor to the company. And again, I want to thank you guys. Look, let's build a community of people who collaboratively we can move faster towards solving this. And I also want to give attribution. I didn't do all of this alone. I have an amazing scientific team, headed up by Julia Durak, our VP of R&D, and Yvette Pacino, who also contributed, and Wang. This is a team effort, and the team includes the community of our users who are here because we're all looking for the same thing. Let's get healthier together.
I love it. Amazing. This was incredible, everybody. So I highly encourage you, please check the show notes. You'll get linked to Symbiome's website, Instagram. Go and check it out. If it's good enough for Kate Hudson, it's going to be good enough for us. And the fact that Chris Brown is a diehard fan, it's got to be good. So thank you again, Larry, so much. I hope everybody has a wonderful rest of their day. Listen to this episode again, because you're going to get new nuggets every time. And we'll see you next week on the Clear Skin Chronicles.
Thanks for hanging out with us this week on the Clear Skin Chronicles. We'll see you next Wednesday with a brand new episode. Remember to subscribe to the show and drop us a review. Sending glowing vibes your way, Katie and Chris.